Okay, hello, everybody. So, I have right here, hold on, let me get my background music going. Volume good? Is the volume good? Volume okay? Acceptable? Also, I apologize. Okay, it's good. Fantastic. Also, I apologize for extended pauses and stuff. I also just got lunch like a couple of minutes ago. So, yeah, I have a massive Subway sandwich and it's amazing. So, the way this is gonna work is I have 7 fairy tales picked out. And the order in which I read them is going to be entirely determined by the spinner wheel that I have pulled up on my computer right now. Some of these stories are a lot more intense than others. Some of them don't actually have good endings, some of them do. Some of them are classics, some of them are a little more niche. So, yeah. Also, you don't get to see the spinner wheel. Only I can see the spinner wheel. So, give me just a moment to get some more sandwich in my body, and we will be on our way. The spinner wheel has sounds, so I'm going to turn on my desktop audio so you can hear it spin. But let me turn the desktop audio down a bit because I don't actually know how loud it's going to be on stream. I also forgot it had it in noise. Okay. So here's an audience question. Would you like to hear the title of the story before I read it? Would you like to hear it afterwards? Would you like it to just remain a mystery forever? See if I can find this. Oh my god. Oh, there it is. And thus ends the tale of blank. Well, if I just read it straight through, every story has an ending. that would render the "and thus ends the tale of blank" entirely unnecessary. Dun dun dun. Waiting for chat to speak. I'm just gonna say it at the start. Sorry, hurting pack elder. Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna say the story title at the start. So, Mother Hall. This is a personal favorite. So I'm very happy that this is the first one that came up. There once was a widow who had 2 daughters, one of whom was pretty and industrious, whilst the other was ugly and idle. But she was much fonder of the ugly and idle one, because she was her own daughter, and the other, who was a stepdaughter, was obliged to do all the work and be the Cinderella of the house. Every day, the poor girl had to sit by a well in the highway, and spin until her fingers bled. Now it happened that one day the shuttle was marked with her blood, so she dipped it in the well to wash the mark off, but it dropped out of her hand and fell to the bottom. She began to weep and ran to her stepmother and told her of the mishap, but she scolded her sharply and was so merciless as to say, "Since you have let the shuttle fall in, you must fetch it out again." So the girl went back to the well and did not know what to do, and in the sorrow of her heart she jumped into the well to get the shuttle. She lost her senses, and when she awoke and came to herself again, she was in a lovely meadow where the sun was shining, and many thousands of flowers were growing. Along this meadow she went, and at last came to a baker's oven full of bread. And the bread cried out, "Oh, take me out, or I shall burn! I have been baked a long time!" So she went up to it, and took all the loaves, one after another, with the bread shovel. After that, she went on till she came to a tree covered with apples, which called out to her, "Oh, shake me, we apples are all right!" So she shook the tree till the apples fell like rain, and went on shaking till they were all down, and when she had gathered them into a heap, she went on her way. At last she came to a little house, out of which an old woman peeped, but she had such large teeth that the girl was frightened, and was about to run away. But the old woman called out to her, "What are you afraid of, dear child? Stay with me. If you will do all the work in the house properly, you shall be the better for it. Only you must take care to make my bed well, and shake it thoroughly till the feathers fly, for then there is snow on the earth. I am Mother Halara." As the woman spoke so kindly to her, the girl took courage and agreed to enter her service. She attended to everything to the satisfaction of her mistress, and always shook her bed so vigorously that the feathers flew about like snowflakes. So she had a pleasant life with her, never an angry word, and boiled or roast meat every day. She stayed some time with Mother Halara, and then she became sad. At first she did not know what was the matter with her, but found at length that it was homesickness. Although she was many thousand times better off here than at home, still she had a longing to be there. At last she said to the old woman, "I have a longing for home, and however well off I am down here, I cannot stay any longer. I must go up again to my own people." Mother Halara said, "I am pleased that you long for your home again, and as you have served me so truly, I myself will take you up again." Thereupon she took her by the hand and led her to a large door. The door was opened, and just as the maiden was standing beneath the doorway, a heavy shower of golden rain fell, and all the gold remained sticking to her, so that she was completely covered over with it. "You shall have that, because you have been so industrious," said Mother Hall, and at the same time she gave her back the shuttle which she had let fall into the well. Thereupon the door closed, and the maiden found herself up above upon the earth, not far from her mother's house. And as she went into the yard, the rooster was standing by the well side and cried, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your golden girls come back to you." So she went in to her mother, and as she arrived thus covered with gold, she was well received, both by her and her sister. The girl told all that had happened to her, and as soon as the mother heard how she had come by so much wealth, she was very anxious to obtain the same good luck for the ugly and lazy daughter. She had to seat herself by the well and spin, and in order that her shuttle might be stained with blood, she stuck her hand into a thorn bush and pricked her finger. Then she threw her shuttle into the well and jumped in after it. Blech, I can speak. She came, like the other, to the beautiful meadow and walked along the very same path. When she got to the oven, the bread again cried, "Oh, take me out, or I shall burn. I have been baked a long time." But the lazy thing answered, "As if I had any wish to make myself dirty." Sorry. I don't know why a southern accent automatically came out. Whoops. And on she went. Soon she came to the apple tree, which cried, "Oh, shake me, we apples are all ripe." But she answered, "I like that, one of you might fall on my head." And so went on. When she came to Mother Hala's house, she was not afraid, for she had already heard of her big teeth, and she hired herself to her immediately. The first day she forced herself to work diligently, and obeyed Mother Hala when she told her to do anything, for she was thinking of all the gold that she would give her. But on the second day she began to be lazy, and on the third day still more so, and then she would not get up in the morning at all. Neither did she make Mother Hala's bed as she ought, and did not shake it so as to make the feathers fly up. Mother Hala was soon tired of this, and gave her notice to leave. The lazy girl was willing enough to go, and thought that now the golden rain would come. Mother Hala led her also to the great door, but while she was standing beneath it, instead of the gold, a big kettle full of pitch was emptied over her. For the unknowing, pitch is tar. Very thick, sticky, black substance. Yeah, that's pitch. "That is the reward for your service," said Mother Hala, and shut the door. So the lazy girl went home, but she was quite covered with pitch, and the rooster by the well side, as soon as he saw her, cried out, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your pitchy girls come back to you." But the pitch stuck fast to her, and could not be got off as long as she lived. Gotta love, what you get for not doing what you're supposed to do, I guess. And it was straight up laziness too, because it was a deliberate choice not to do it, even though she had the energy and full capacity to do so. So, yay. Alright, so that was Mother Hala. Absolutely beloved favorite story of mine. It's so good, in my opinion. Now then, next up is me eating, actually. Alright, the next story is The Goose Girl. So I'm going to find that very, very quickly. It'll probably actually be pretty slow, but you know. 71. There was once upon a time an old queen whose husband had been dead for many years, and she had a beautiful daughter. When the princess grew up, she was betrothed to a prince who lived at a great distance. When the time came for her to be married, and she had to journey forth into the distant kingdom, the aged queen packed up for her many costly vessels of silver and gold, and trinkets also of gold and silver, and cups and jewels. In short, everything which appertained to a royal dowry. For she loved her child with all her heart. She likewise sent her maid-in-waiting, who was to ride with her, and hand her over to the bridegroom, and each had a horse for the journey, but the horse of the king's daughter was called Halara, and could speak. So when the hour of parting had come, the aged mother went into her bedroom, took a small knife, and cut her finger with it until it bled. Then she held a white handkerchief to it, into which she let 3 drops of blood fall, gave it to her daughter, and said, "Dear child, preserve this carefully. It will be of service to you on your way." Hello, Celeste. Welcome, welcome. So they took a sorrowful leave of each other. The princess put the piece of cloth in her bosom, that is her chest, effectively the stashing of things in your bra, but when corsets were normal. Mounted her horse, and then went away to her bridegroom. After she had ridden for a while, she felt a burning thirst, and said to her waiting maid, "Dismount and take my cup which thou hast brought with thee for me, and get me some water from the stream, for I should like to drink." "If you are thirsty," said the waiting maid, "get off your horse yourself, and lie down and drink out of the water. I don't choose to be your servant." So in her great thirst, the princess alighted, bent down over the water in the stream, and drank, and was not allowed to drink out of the golden cup. Then she said, "Ah, heaven!" And the 3 drops of blood answered, "If thy mother knew, her heart would break." But the king's daughter was humble, said nothing, and mounted her horse again. "I can't stay for long. I'll be working the fall festival, but I'll definitely watch the VOD later." Okay, that's valid. That's fine. VOD Squad is still amazing. She rode some miles farther, but the day was warm, the sun scorched her, and she was thirsty once more, and when they came to a stream of water, she again cried to her waiting maid, "Dismount and give me some water in my golden cup," for she had long ago forgotten the girl's ill words. But the waiting maid said still more haughtily, "If you wish to drink, drink as you can. I don't choose to be your maid." Then, in her great thirst, the king's daughter alighted, bent over the flowing stream, wept, and said, "Ah, heaven!" And the drops of blood again replied, "If thy mother knew this, her heart would break." And as she was thus drinking and leaning right over the stream, the handkerchief with the 3 drops of blood fell out of her bosom, and floated away with the water without her observing it, so great was her trouble. The waiting maid, however, had seen it, and she rejoiced to think that she had now power over the bride, for since the princess had lost the drops of blood, she had become weak and powerless. So now, when she wanted to mount her horse again, the one that was called Halara, the waiting maid said, "Halara is more suitable for me, and my nag will do for thee." And the princess had to be content with that. Then the waiting maid, with many hard words, bade the princess exchange her royal apparel for the maid's own shabby clothes, and at length she was compelled to swear by the clear sky above her that she would not say one word of this to anyone at the royal court. And if she had not taken this oath, she would have been killed on the spot. But Falada saw all this, and observed it well. The waiting maid now mounted Falada, and the true bride the bad horse, and thus they travelled onwards until at length they entered the royal palace. There were great rejoicings over her arrival, and the prince sprang forward to meet her, lifted the waiting maid from her horse, and thought she was his consort. She was conducted upstairs, but the real princess was left standing below. Then the old king looked out of the window and saw her standing in the courtyard, and how dainty and delicate and beautiful she was, and instantly went to the royal apartment and asked the bride about the girl she had with her who was standing down below in the courtyard and who she was. "I picked her up on my way for a companion. Give the girl something to work at, that she may not stand idle." But the old king had no work for her, and knew of none, so he said, "I have a little boy who tends the geese. She may help him." The boy was called Conrad, and the true bride had to help him to tend the geese. Soon afterwards, the false bride said to the young king, "Dearest husband, I beg you to do me a favor." He answered, "I will do so most willingly." "Then send for the knacker, and have the head of the horse on which I rode here cut off, for it vexed me on the way." In reality, she was afraid that the horse might tell how she had behaved to the king's daughter. Then she succeeded in making the king promise that it should be done, and the faithful Halara was to die. This came to the ears of the real princess, and she secretly promised to pay the knacker a piece of gold if he would perform a small service for her. There was a great dark-looking gateway in the town, through which morning and evening she had to pass with the geese. Would he be so good as to nail up Falada's head on it, so that she might see him again more than once? The knacker's man promised to do that, and cut off the head and nailed it fast beneath the dark gateway. Early in the morning, when she and Conrad drove out their flock beneath this gateway, she said in passing, "Alas, Falada, hanging there." Then the head answered, "Alas, young queen, how ill you fare. If this your tender mother knew, her heart would surely break in two." Then they went still farther out of the town, and drove their geese into the country. And when they had come to the meadow, she sat down and unbound her hair, which was like pure gold. And Conrad saw it, and delighted in its brightness, and wanted to pluck out a few hairs. And then she said, "Blow, blow, thou gentle wind, I say, blow Conrad's little hat away, and make him chase it here and there, until I have braided all my hair and bound it up again." And there came such a violent wind that it blew Conrad's hat far away across country, and he was forced to run after it. When he came back, she had finished combing her hair and was putting it up again, and he could not get any of it. Then Conrad was angry and would not speak to her, and thus they watched the geese until the evening, and then they went home. Next day, when they were driving the geese out through the dark gateway, the maiden said, "Alas, Falada, hanging there." Falada answered, "Alas, young queen, how ill you fare. If this your tender mother knew, her heart would surely break in two." And she sat down again in the field, and began to comb out her hair, and Conrad ran and tried to clutch it, so she said in haste, "Blow, blow, thou gentle wind, I say, blow Conrad's little hat away, and make him chase it here and there, until I have braided all my hair, and bound it up again." Then the wind blew, and blew his little hat off his head and far away, and Conrad was forced to run after it, and when he came back her hair had been put up a long time, and he could get none of it, and so they looked after their geese till evening came. But in the evening, after they had got home, Conrad went to the old king, and said, "I won't tend the geese with that girl any longer." "Why not?" inquired the aged king. "Oh, because she vexes me the whole day long." Then the aged king commanded him to relate what it was that she did to him, and Conrad said, "In the morning, when we pass beneath the dark gateway with the flock, there is a sorry horse's head on the wall, and she says to it, 'Alas, Falada, hanging there.' And the head replies, 'Alas, young queen, how ill you fare. If this your tender mother knew, her heart would surely break in two." My phone's ringer is on. That's not part of the story, that's just a out-of-book comment. And Conrad went on to relate what happened on the goose pasture, and how when there he had to chase his hat. The aged king commanded him to drive his flock out again next day, and as soon as morning came, he placed himself behind the dark gateway, and heard how the maiden spoke to the head of Falada. And then he too went into the country, and hid himself in the thicket in the meadow. There he soon saw with his own eyes the goose girl and the goose boy bringing their flock, and how after a while she sat down and unplaited her hair, which shone with radiance, and soon she said, "Blow, blow, thou gentle wind, I say, blow Conrad's little hat away, and make him chase it here and there, until I have braided all my hair and bound it up again." Then came a blast of wind and carried off Conrad's hat, so that he had to run far away, while the maiden quietly went on combing and plaiting her hair, all of which the king observed. Then, quite unseen, he went away, and when the goose girl came home in the evening, he called her aside and asked why she did all these things. "I may not tell you that, and I dare not lament my sorrows to any human being, for I have sworn not to do so by the heaven which is above me. If I had not done that, I should have lost my life." He urged her and left her no peace, but he could draw nothing from her. Then said he, "If thou wilt not tell me anything, tell thy sorrows to the iron stove there." And he went away. Then she crept into the iron stove and began to weep and lament, and emptied her whole heart, and said, "Here I am, deserted by the whole world, and yet I am a king's daughter, and a false waiting maid has by force brought me to such a pass that I have been compelled to put off my royal apparel, and she has taken my place with my bridegroom, and I have to perform menial service as a goose girl. If my mother did but know that, her heart would break." The aged king, however, was standing outside by the pipe of the stove, and was listening to what she said, and had heard it. Then he came back again, and bade her come out of the stove, and royal garments were placed on her, and it was marvelous how beautiful she was. The aged king summoned his son, and revealed to him that he had got the false bride, who was only a waiting maid, but that the true one was standing there as the sometime goose girl. The young king rejoiced with all his heart when he saw her beauty and youth, and a great feast was made ready, to which all the people and all good friends were invited. At the head of the table sat the bridegroom with the king's daughter at one side of him, and the waiting maid on the other. But the waiting maid was blinded, and did not recognize the princess in her dazzling array. When they had eaten and drunk and were merry, the aged king asked the waiting maid as a riddle what a person deserved who had behaved in such and such a way to her master, and at the same time related the whole story, and asked what sentence such a one merited. Then the false bride said, "She deserves no better fate than to be stripped entirely naked, and put in a barrel which is studded inside with pointed nails, and 2 white horses should be harnessed to it, which will drag her along through one street after another till she is dead." "It is thou," said the aged king, "and thou hast pronounced thine own sentence, and thus it shall be done to thee." And when the sentence had been carried out, the young king married his true bride, and both of them reigned over their kingdom in peace and happiness. Happy ending! That end, though, with the girl in the barrel with the nails, that's messed up, man. That is incredibly messed up. Quick break for me to consume more food. Alright, we have the cat and mouse in partnership. I love this story. I love animals. I especially love it when the animals can talk and also fight. A certain cat had made the acquaintance of a mouse, and had said so much to her about the great love and friendship she felt for her, that at length the mouse agreed that they should live and keep house together. "But we must make a provision for winter, or else we shall suffer from hunger," said the cat, "and you, little mouse, cannot venture everywhere, or you will be caught in a trap some day." The good advice was followed, and a pot of fat was bought, but they did not know where to put it. At length, after much consideration, the cat said, I know no place where it will be better stored up than in the church, for no one dares take anything away from there. We will set it beneath the altar and not touch it until we are really in need of it." So the pot was placed in safety, but it was not long before the cat had a great yearning for it, and said to the mouse, "I want to tell you something, little mouse. My cousin has brought a little son into the world and has asked me to be godmother. He is white with brown spots, and I am to hold him over the font at the christening. Let me go out today, and you look after the house by yourself." "Yes, yes," answered the mouse. "By all means go, and if you get anything very good, think of me. I should like a drop of sweet red christening wine, too." All this, however, was untrue. The cat had no cousin, and had not been asked to be godmother. She went straight to the church, stole to the pot of fat, began to lick at it, and licked the top of the fat off. Then she took a walk upon the roofs of the town, looked out for opportunities, and then stretched herself in the sun, and licked her lips whenever she thought of the pot of fat, and not until it was evening did she return home. "Well, here you are again," said the mouse. "No doubt you have had a merry day." "All went off well," answered the cat. "What name did they give the child?" "Top off," said the cat quite coolly. "Top off!" cried the mouse. "That is a very odd and uncommon name. Is it a usual one in your family?" "What does it signify?" said the cat. "It is no worse than Crumb Stealer, as your godchildren are called." Before long, the cat was seized by another fit of longing. She said to the mouse, "You must do me a favor, and once more manage the house for a day alone. I am again asked to be godmother, and as the child has a white ring round its neck, I cannot refuse." The good mouse consented, but the cat crept behind the town walls to the church, and devoured half the pot of fat. "Nothing ever seems so good as what one keeps to oneself," said she, and was quite satisfied with her day's work. When she went home, the mouse inquired, "And what was this child christened?" "Half done," answered the cat. "Half done? What are you saying? I never heard the name in my life. I'll wager anything it is not in the calendar." The cat's mouth soon began to water for some more licking. "All good things go in threes," said she. "I am asked to stand godmother again. The child is quite black, only it has white paws. But with that exception, it has not a single white hair on its whole body. This only happens once every few years. You will let me go, won't you?" "Top off! Half done!" answered the mouse. "They are such odd names, they make me very thoughtful." "You sit at home," said the cat, "in your dark gray fur coat and long tail, and are filled with fancies. That's because you do not go out in the daytime." During the cat's absence, the mouse cleaned the house. Mouse house. Sorry. And put it in order, but the greedy cat entirely emptied the pot of fat. "When everything is eaten up, one has some peace," said she to herself, and well filled and fat, she did not return home till night. The mouse at once asked what name had been given to the third child. "It will not please you more than the others," said the cat. "He is called All Gone." "All Gone!" cried the mouse. "That's the most suspicious name of all. I have never seen it in print. All Gone! What can that mean?" And she shook her head, curled herself up, and lay down to sleep. From this time forth, no one invited the cat to be godmother. But when the winter had come, and there was no longer anything to be found outside, the mouse thought of their provision, and said, "Come, cat, we will go to enjoy our pot of fat which we have stored up for ourselves. We shall enjoy that." "Yes," answered the cat, "you will enjoy it as much as you would enjoy sticking that dainty tongue of yours out the window." They set out on their way, but when they arrived, the pot of fat certainly was still in its place, but it was empty. "Alas!" said the mouse, "now I see what has happened. Now it comes to light. You are a true friend. You have devoured all when you were standing godmother. First top off, then half done, then—" "Will you hold your tongue?" cried the cat. "One more word, and I will eat you too." All Gone was already on the poor mouse's lips. Scarcely had she spoken it, before the cat sprang on her, seized her, and swallowed her down. Verily, that is the way of the world. Gotta love eating people, am I right? Well, eating mice. Redwall, if Brian Jakes was wasn't a coward. All right. Food break. And now, we have a beloved classic that Disney's cowardice did not do justice to. Hold on. Cinderella. The wife of a rich man fell sick, and as she felt that her end was drawing near, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and then the good God will always protect thee, and I will look down on thee from heaven and be near thee." Thereupon she closed her eyes and departed. Every day the maiden went out to her mother's grave and wept, and she remained pious and good. When the winter came, the snow spread a white sheet over the grave, and when the spring sun had drawn it off again, the man had taken another wife. The woman had brought 2 daughters into the house with her, who were beautiful and fair of face, but vile and black of heart. Now began a bad time for the poor stepchild. "Is the stupid goose to sit in the parlor with us?" said they. "He who wants to eat bread must earn it. Out with the kitchen wench." They took her pretty clothes away from her, put an old gray bedgown on her, and gave her wooden shoes. "Just look at the proud princess, how decked out she is!" they cried, and laughed, and led her into the kitchen. There she had to do hard work from morning till night, get up before daybreak, carry water, light fires, cook, and wash. Besides this, the sisters did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied her peas and lentils into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them out again. In the evening, when she had worked till she was weary, she had no bed to go to, but had to sleep by the fireside in the ashes. And as on that account she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Cinderella. It happened that the father was once going to the fair, and he asked his 2 stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Beautiful dresses," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the second. "And thou, Cinderella," said he, "what wilt thou have?" "Father, break off from me the first branch which knocks against your hat on your way home." So he bought beautiful dresses, pearls, and jewels for his 2 stepdaughters, and on his way home, as he was riding through a green thicket, a hazel twig brushed against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave his stepdaughters the things which they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the branch from the hazel bush. Cinderella thanked him, went to her mother's grave, and planted the branch on it, and wept so much that the tears fell down on it and watered it, and it grew, however, and became a handsome tree. Thrice a day Cinderella went and sat beneath it, and wept and prayed, and a little white bird always came on the tree, and if Cinderella expressed a wish, the bird threw down to her what she had wished for. It happened, however, that the king appointed a festival which was to last 3 days, and to which all the beautiful young girls in the country were invited, in order that his son might choose himself a bride. When the 2 stepsisters heard that they too were to appear among the number, they were delighted. Called Cinderella, and said, "Comb our hair for us, brush our shoes, and fasten our buckles, for we are going to the festival at the king's palace." Cinderella obeyed but wept, because she too would have liked to go with them to the dance, and begged her stepmother to allow her to do so. "Thou go, Cinderella," said she. "Thou art dusty and dirty, and would go to the festival. Thou hast no clothes and shoes, and yet wouldst dance." As, however, Cinderella went on asking, the stepmother at last said, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into the ashes for thee. If thou hast picked them out again in 2 hours, thou shalt go with us." The maiden went through the back door into the garden, and called, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, and the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the pigeons nodded with their heads, and began, "Pick, pick, pick, pick," and the rest also, "Pick, pick, pick, pick," and gathered all the good grains into the dish. Hardly had 1 hour passed before they finished, and all flew out again. Then the girl took the dish to her stepmother, and was glad, and believed that now she would be allowed to go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, thou hast no clothes, and thou canst not dance. Thou wouldst only be laughed at." And as Cinderella wept at this, the stepmother said, "If thou canst pick 2 dishes of lentils out of the ashes for me in 1 hour, thou shalt go with us." And she thought to herself, that she most certainly cannot do. When the stepmother had emptied the 2 dishes of lentils among the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds under heaven, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at length all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the doves nodded with their heads and began, "Pick, pick, pick, pick." And the others began also, "Pick, pick, pick, pick," and gathered all the good seeds into the dishes, and before half an hour was over, they had already finished, and all flew out again. Then the maiden carried the dishes to the stepmother, and was delighted, and believed that she might now go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "All this will not help thee. Thou goest not with us, for thou hast no clothes, and canst not dance. We should be ashamed of thee." On this she turned her back on Cinderella, and hurried away with her 2 proud daughters. As no one was now at home, Cinderella went to her mother's grave beneath the hazel tree, and cried, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down over me." Then the bird threw a gold and silver dress down to her, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver. She put on the dress with all speed, and went to the festival. Her stepsisters and the stepmother, however, did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, for she looked so beautiful in the golden dress. They never once thought of Cinderella, and believed that she was sitting at home in the dirt, picking lentils out of the ashes. The prince went to meet her, took her by the hand, and danced with her. He would dance with no other maiden, and never let loose of her hand, and if anyone else came to invite her, he said, "This is my partner." She danced till it was evening, and then she wanted to go home. But the king's son said, "I will go with thee, and bear thee company," for he wished to see to whom the beautiful maiden belonged. She escaped from him, however, and sprang into the pigeon house. The king's son waited until her father came, and then he told him that this strange maiden had leapt into the pigeon house. The old man thought, "Can it be Cinderella?" And they had to bring him an axe and a pickaxe that he might hew the pigeon house to pieces, but no one was inside it. And when they got home, Cinderella lay in her dirty clothes amongst the ashes, and a dim little oil lamp was burning on the mantelpiece, for Cinderella had jumped quickly down from the back of the pigeon house, and had run to the little hazel tree. and there she had taken off her beautiful clothes and laid them on the grave, and the bird had taken them away again, and then she had placed herself in the kitchen amongst the ashes in her grey gown. Next day, when the festival began afresh, and her parents and the stepsisters had gone, not God, Cinderella went to the hazel tree and said, "Shiver and quiver, my little tree, silver and gold throw down over me." And now the bird threw down to her a dress which was more splendid and magnificent than any she had yet had, and the slippers were golden. And she went to the festival in the dress. No one knew how to speak for astonishment. The king's son danced with her only, and if anyone invited her to dance, he said, "She is my partner." When evening came, Cinderella wished to leave, and the king's son was anxious to go with her, but she escaped from him so quickly that he could not follow her. The king's son had, however, used a stratagem, and had caused the whole staircase to be smeared with pitch, and there, when she ran down, had the maiden's left slipper remained sticking. There we go. The king's son picked it up, and it was small and dainty, and all golden. Next morning he went with it to the father, and said to him, "No one shall be my wife, but she whose foot this golden slipper fits." Then were the two sisters glad, for they had pretty feet. The eldest went with the shoe into her room and wanted to try it on, and her mother stood by. But she could not get her big toe into it, and the shoe was too small for her. Then her mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot." The maiden cut the toe off, forced the foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. Then he took her on his horse as his bride, and rode away with her. They were, however, obliged to pass the grave, and there on the hazel tree sat the two pigeons, and they cried, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." Then he looked at her foot, and saw how the blood was streaming from it. He turned his horse round, and took the false bride home again, and said she was not the true one, and that the other sister was to put the shoe on. Then this one went into her chamber, and got her toes safely into the shoe, but her heel was too large. So her mother gave her a knife, and said, "Cut a bit off thy heel. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot." The maiden cut a bit off her heel, forced her foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. He took her on his horse as his bride, and rode away with her. But when they passed the hazel tree, two little pigeons sat on it, and cried, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." He looked down at her foot, and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe, and how it had stained her white stocking. Then he turned his horse, and took the false bride home again. "This also is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "There is still a little stunted kitchen wench, which my late wife left behind her, but she cannot possibly be the bride." The king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty, she cannot show herself." He absolutely insisted on it, and Cinderella had to be called. She first washed her hands and face clean, and then went and bowed down before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. There she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it into the slipper, which fitted like a glove. And when she rose up, and the king's son looked at her face, he recognized the beautiful maiden who had danced with him, and cried, "That is the true bride!" The stepmother and the two sisters were terrified, and became pale with rage. He, however, took Cinderella on his horse, and rode away with her. As they passed by the hazel tree, the two white doves cried, turn and peep, no blood is in the shoe. The shoe is not too small for her, the true bride rides with you. And when they had cried that, the two came flying down and placed themselves on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right, the other on the left, and remained sitting there. When the wedding with the king's son had to be celebrated, the two false sisters came and wanted to get into favor with Cinderella and share her good fortune. When the betrothed couple went to church, the elder was at the right side and the younger at the left, and the pigeon pecked out one eye of each of them. Afterwards, as they came back, the elder was at the left and the younger at the right, and then the pigeons pecked out the other eye of each, and thus for their wickedness and falsehood they were punished with blindness as long as they lived. Now, I have been reading quite a bit in the last almost hour, so I'm going to give my voice a break, and I will be back relatively soon. Your star has returned. All right. Oh, the juniper tree. Here, hold on. Let me adjust how I'm sitting and then I will go locate it in the book. Give me several moments. Okay. Page 244, 244, 244, 244. Too far, too far, too far, too far. Okay. So then, the juniper tree. It is now long ago, quite 2,000 years, since there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife, and they loved each other dearly. They had, however, no children, though they wished for them very much, and the woman prayed for them day and night, but still they had none. Now there was a courtyard in front of their house, in which was a juniper tree, and one day in winter the woman was standing beneath it, paring herself an apple, and while she was paring herself the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah," said the woman, and sighed right heavily, and looked at the blood before her, and was most unhappy. "Ah, if I had but a child as red as blood and as white as snow." And while she thus spake, she became quite happy in her mind, and felt just as if that were going to happen. Then she went into the house, and a month went by, and the snow was gone, and 2 months, and then everything was green, and 3 months, and then all the flowers came out of the earth, and 4 months, and then all the trees in the wood grew thicker, and the green branches were all closely entwined, and the birds sang until the wood resounded, and the blossoms fell from the trees. Then the 5th month passed away, and she stood under the juniper tree, which smelt so sweetly that her heart leapt, and she fell on her knees, and was beside herself with joy. And when the 6th month was over, the fruit was large and fine, and she was quite still, and the 7th month she snatched at the juniper berries, and ate them greedily. Then she grew sick and sorrowful. Who nods and why? Hello, Valora, do I need to mute myself?
For just a moment.
Okay, anyways. Then the 8th month passed, and she called her husband to her, and wept, and said, "If I die, then bury me beneath the juniper tree." Then she was quite comforted and happy until the next month was over, and then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood. And this is how we know it's magic. There was not a 9-month conception in this. And when she beheld it, she was so delighted that she died. Oof. Then her husband buried her beneath the juniper tree, and he began to weep sore. After some time he was more at ease, and though he still wept, he could bear it, and after some time longer he took another wife. By the 2nd wife he had a daughter, but the 1st wife's child was a little son, and he was as red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her very much, but then she looked at the little boy, and it seemed to cut her to the heart. For the thought came into her mind that he would always stand in her way, and she was forever thinking how she could get all the fortune for her daughter, and the evil one, for the uninitiated, this is Satan, filled her mind with this, till she was quite wroth with the little boy, and slapped him here and cuffed him there, until the unhappy child was in continual terror, for when he came out of school he had no peace in any place. One day the woman had gone upstairs to her room, and her little daughter went up too, and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the woman, and gave her a fine apple out of the chest, but the chest had a great heavy lid with a great sharp iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter, "is brother not to have one too?" This made the woman angry, but she said, "Yes, when he comes out of school." And when she saw from the window that he was coming, it is just as if the devil entered into her, and she snatched at the apple and took it away again from her daughter, and said, "Thou shalt not have one before thy brother." Then she threw the apple into the chest and shut it. Then the little boy came in at the door, and the devil made her say to him kindly, "My son, wilt thou have an apple?" And she looked wickedly at him. "Mother," said the little boy, "how dreadful you look!" That's a sure way to get murdered by your mom. "Yes, give me an apple." Then it seemed to her as if she were forced to say to him, "Come with me." And she opened the lid of the chest and said, take out an apple for thyself. And while the little boy was stooping inside, the devil prompted her, and crash! She shut the lid down, and his head flew off and fell among the red apples. Then she was overwhelmed with terror, and thought, if I could but make them think that it was not done by me. So she went upstairs to her room to a chest of drawers, and took a white handkerchief out of the top drawer, and set the head on the neck again, and folded the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen, and she set him on a chair in front of the door, and put the apple in his hand. After this, Marlinchen came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire with a pan of hot water before her, which she was constantly stirring round. "Mother," said Marlinchen, "brother is sitting at the door, and he looks quite white, and has an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he did not answer me, and I was quite frightened." "Go back to him," said her mother, "and if he will not answer thee, give him a box on the ear." So Marlinchen went to him, and said, "Brother, give me the apple." But he was silent, and she gave him a box on the ear, on which his head fell down. Marlinchen was terrified, and began crying and screaming, and ran to her mother and said, "Alas, mother, I have knocked my brother's head off!" And she wept, and could not be comforted. "Marlinchen," said the mother, "what hast thou done? But be quiet, and let no one know it. It cannot be helped now. We will make him into black puddings." Then the mother took the little boy, and chopped him into pieces, put him into the pan, and made him into black puddings. But Marlinchen stood by, weeping and weeping, and all her tears fell into the pan, and there was no need of any salt. Then the father came home, and sat down to dinner, and said, "But where is my son?" And the mother served up a great dish of black puddings, and Marlinchen wept, and could not leave off. Then the father again said, "But where is my son?" "Ah," said the mother, "he has gone across the country to his mother's great-uncle. He will stay there a while." "And what is he going to do there? He did not even say good-bye to me." "Oh, he wanted to go, and asked me if he might stay 6 weeks. He is well taken care of there." "Ah," said the man, "I feel so unhappy, lest all should not be right. He ought to have said good-bye to me." With that he began to eat, and said, "Marlinchen, why art thou crying? Thy brother will certainly come back." Then he said, "Ah, wife, how delicious this food is! Give me some more." And the more he ate, the more he wanted to have, and he said, "Give me some more. You shall have none of it. It seems to me as if it were all mine." And he ate, and threw all the bones under the table until he had finished the whole. But Marlinchen went away to her chest of drawers, and took her best silk handkerchief out of the bottom drawer, and got all the bones from beneath the table, and tied them up in her silk handkerchief, and carried them outside the door, weeping tears of blood. Jesus Lord. Sorry, I just randomly remembered the, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane sweating blood. That, Jesus Lord. Anyways, Then the juniper tree began to stir itself, and the branches parted asunder and moved together again, just as if someone was rejoicing and clapping his hands. At the same time a mist seemed to arise from the tree, and in the center of this mist it burned like a fire, and a beautiful bird flew out of the fire singing magnificently, and he flew high up in the air, and when he was gone the juniper tree was just as it had been before, and the handkerchief with the bones was no longer there. Marlinchen, however, was as gay and happy as if her brother were still alive, and she went merrily into the house and sat down to dinner and ate. But the bird flew away and alighted on a goldsmith's house and began to sing. One moment. My mother she killed me, my father he ate me, my sister little Marlinchen gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. The goldsmith was sitting in his workshop making a gold chain when he heard the bird which was singing on his roof, and very beautiful the song seemed to him. He stood up, but as he crossed the threshold he lost one of his slippers. But he went away right up the middle of the street with one shoe on and one sock. He had his apron on, and in one hand he had the gold chain, and in the other the pincers, and the sun was shining brightly on the street. Then he went right on and stood still, and said to the bird, "Bird," said he then, "how beautifully thou canst sing! Sing me that piece again." "No," said the bird, "I'll not sing it twice for nothing. Give me the golden chain, and then I will sing it again for thee." "There," said the goldsmith, "there is the golden chain for me. Now sing me that song again." Then the bird came and took the golden chain in his right claw, and went and sat in front of the goldsmith and sang, "My mother she killed me, my father he ate me, my sister little Marlinchen gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." Then the bird flew away to a shoemaker and lighted on his roof and sang the same song again. I'm not reading that entire thing. The shoemaker heard that, and ran out of doors in his shirt sleeves, and looked up at his roof, and was forced to hold his hand before his eyes, lest the sun should blind him. "Bird," said he, "how beautifully thou canst sing." Then he called in at his door, "Wife, just come outside, there is a bird, look at that bird, he just can sing well." Then he called his daughter and children and apprentices, boys and girls, and they all came up the street and looked at the bird, and saw how beautiful he was, and what fine red and green feathers he had, and how like real gold his neck was, and how the eyes in his head shone like stars. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing me that song again." "Nay," said the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. Thou must give me something." "Wife," said the man, "go to the garret. Upon the top shelf there stands a pair of red shoes. Bring them down." Then the wife went and brought the shoes. "There, bird," said the man, "now sing me that piece again." Then the bird came and took the shoes in his left claw, and flew back on the roof and sang. And when he had sung the whole, he flew away. In his right claw he had the chain and shoes in his left, and he flew far away to a mill, and the mill went clip-clap, clip-clap, clip-clap. And in the mill sat 20 miller's men, hewing a stone and cutting, hick-hack, 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 and the mill went clip-clap, clip-clap, clip-clap. Then the bird went and sat on a lime tree which stood in front of the mill, and sang, "My mother she killed me." Then one of them stopped working. "My father he ate me." Then 2 more stopped working and listened to that. "My sister, little Marlinchen." Then 4 more stopped. "Gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief." Now only 8 were hewing. "Laid them beneath." Now only 5. "The juniper tree." And now only 1. "Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." Then the last stopped also, and heard the last words. "Bird," said he, "how beautifully thou singest. Let me, too, hear that. Sing that once more for me." "Nay," said the bird, "I will not sing twice for nothing. Give me the millstone, and then I will sing it again." "Yes," said he, "if it belonged to me only, thou shouldst have it." "Yes," said the others, "if he sings again, he shall have it." Then the bird came down, and the 20 millers all set to work with a beam and raised the stone up, and the bird stuck his neck through the hole and put the stone on as if it were a collar, and flew onto the tree again and sang, "My mother she killed me, my father he ate me, my sister little Marlinchen gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." And when he had done singing, he spread his wings, and in his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes, and round his neck the millstone, and he flew far away to his father's house. In the room sat the father, the mother, and Marlinchen at dinner, and the father said, "How light-hearted I feel! How happy I am!" "Nay," said the mother, "I feel so uneasy, just as if a heavy storm were coming." Marlinchen, however, sat weeping and weeping. And then came the bird flying, and as it seated itself on the roof, the father said, "Ah, I feel so truly happy, and the sun is shining so beautifully outside. I feel just as if I were about to see some old friend again." "Nay," said the woman, "I feel so anxious, my teeth chatter, and I seem to have fire in my veins." And she tore her stays open. Oof. That must have been rough. Stays boning. Oof. But Marlinchen sat in a corner crying, and held her plate before her eyes, and cried till it was quite wet. Then the bird sat on the juniper tree and sang, "My mother, she killed me." Then the mother stopped her ears and shut her eyes, and would not see or hear, but there was a roaring in her ears like the most violent storm, and her eyes burnt and flashed like lightning. "My father, he ate me." "Ah, mother," says the man, "that is a beautiful bird. He sings so splendidly, and the sun shines so warm, and there is a smell just like cinnamon." "My sister, little Marlinchen." Then Marlinchen laid her head on her knees and wept without ceasing, but the man said, "I am going out. I must see the bird quite close." "Oh, don't go," said the woman. "I feel as if the whole house were shaking and on fire." But the man went out and looked at the bird. He gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. On this, the bird let the golden chain fall, and it fell exactly round the man's neck, and so exactly round it that it fitted beautifully. Then he went in and said, "Just look what a fine bird that is, and what a handsome gold chain he has given me, and how pretty he is." But the woman was terrified, and fell down on the floor in the room, and her cap fell off her head. Then sang the bird once more, "My mother, she killed me." "Would that I were 1,000 feet beneath the earth, so as not to hear that." "My father, he ate me." Then the woman fell down again, as if dead. "My sister, little Marlinchen." "Ah," said Marlinchen, "I too will go out and see if the bird will give me anything." And she went out. Gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief. Then he threw down the shoes to her, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then she was light-hearted and joyous, and she put on the new red shoes, and danced and leapt into the house. "Ah," said she, "I was so sad when I went out, and now I am so light-hearted. That is a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes." "Well," said the woman, and sprang to her feet, and her hair stood up like flames of fire. "I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I too will go out and see if my heart feels lighter." And as she went out at the door, crash! The bird threw down the millstone on her head, and she was entirely crushed by it. The father and Marlinchen heard what had happened and went out, and smoke, flames, and fire were rising from the place. And when that was over, there stood the little brother, and he took his father and Marlinchen by the hand, and all three were right glad, and they went into the house to dinner and ate. Well, that's just a lovely little story about how if you murder your stepson, he will become a bird and then drop a millstone on you. Talk about just desserts, am I right? Right, quick food break. For those of you who have lost count, I only have 2 stories remaining. Ahaha! Rapunzel, the original. Disney changed the story so completely for Tangled that they may as well have changed the name of the main character. Fun fact. At least Cinderella was basically the same story, just with the gory bits taken out. But Tangled is so utterly different from the fairy tale Rapunzel that I'm salty that they still named her Rapunzel. Anyways. Now then, thus begins the story of Rapunzel. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length, the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day, the woman was standing by this window and looking down into the garden when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, parenthetical, Rapunzel, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it and had the great desire to eat some. This desire increased every day, and as she knew that she could not get any of it, she quite pined away and looked pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What aileth thee, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't get some of the rampion which is in the garden behind our house to eat, I shall die." The man, who loved her, thought, "Sooner than let thy wife die, bring her some of the rampion thyself, let it cost thee what it will." In the twilight of the evening, he clambered down over the wall into the garden of the enchantress, hastily clutched a handful of rampion, and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it, and ate it with much relish. She, however, liked it so much, so very much, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more descend into the garden. In the gloom of evening, therefore, he let himself down again, but when he had clambered down the wall he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing before him. "How canst thou dare," said she with an angry look, "to descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief? Thou shalt suffer for it." "Ah," answered he, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window, and felt such a longing for it that she would have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened, and said to him, "If the case be as thou sayest, I will allow thee to take away with thee as much rampion as thou wilt, only I make one condition. Thou must give me the child which thy wife will bring into the world. It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother." The man in his terror consented to everything, and when the woman was brought to bed, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child beneath the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower which lay in a forest, and had neither stairs nor door, but quite at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair to me." Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braided tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 ells down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. After a year or 2, it came to pass that the king's son rode through the forest and went by the tower. Then he heard a song which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who in her solitude passed her time letting her sweet voice resound. The king's son wanted to climb up to her and looked for the door of the tower, but none was to be found. He rode home, but the singing had so deeply touched his heart that every day he went out into the forest and listened to it. Once, when he was thus standing behind a tree, he saw that an enchantress came there, and he heard how she cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair." Then Rapunzel let down the braids of her hair, and the enchantress climbed up to her. "If that is the ladder by which one mounts, I will for once try my fortune," said he. And the next day, when it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair." Immediately, the hair fell down, and the king's son climbed up. At first, Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man such as her eyes had never yet beheld came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend, and told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had let him have no rest, and he had been forced to see her. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked her if she would take him for her husband, and she saw that he was young and handsome, she thought, "He will love me more than old Dame Gothel does." And she said yes, and laid her hand in his. She said, I will willingly go away with thee, but I do not know how to get down. Bring with thee a skein of silk every time that thou comest, and I will weave a ladder with it, and when that is ready I will descend, and thou wilt take me on thy horse. They agreed that until the time he should come to her every evening They agreed that until that time he should come to her every evening, for the old woman came by day. The enchantress remarked nothing of this, until once Rapunzel said to her, "Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens that you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the young king's son. He is with me in a moment." "Ah, thou wicked child!" cried the enchantress. "What do I hear thee say? I thought I had separated thee from all the world, and yet thou hast deceived me." In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice round her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with the right, and snip-snap they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground, and she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert, where she had to live in great grief and misery. On the same day, however, that she cast out Rapunzel, the enchantress in the evening fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook of the window, and when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair," she let the hair down. The king's son ascended, but he did not find his dearest Rapunzel above, but the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous looks. "Aha!" she cried mockingly, "thou wouldst fetch thy dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out thy eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to thee, thou wilt never see her more." The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind into the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did nothing but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins to which she had given birth, a boy and a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went towards it, and when he approached, Rapunzel knew him, and fell on his neck and wept. 2 of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see with them as before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and they lived for a long time afterwards, happy and contented. Right then, now I only have one choice, one option, one story remains. So give me just a moment. And the final story is the one that is the absolute most messed up. Like, it's not just marginally messed up like some of them. This is... yes. So let me just find it. The Robber Bridegroom. My beloved. There was once on a time a miller who had a beautiful daughter, and as she was grown up, he wished that she was provided for and well married. He thought, if any good suitor comes and asks for her, I will give her to him. Not long afterwards, a suitor came who appeared to be very rich, and as the miller had no fault to find with him, he promised his daughter to him. The maiden, however, did not like him quite so much as a girl should like the man to whom she is engaged, and had no confidence in him. Whenever she saw or thought of him, she felt a secret horror. Once he said to her, "Thou art my betrothed, and yet thou hast never once paid me a visit." The maiden replied, "I know not where thy house is." Then said the bridegroom, "My house is out there in the dark forest." She tried to excuse herself, and said she could not find the way there. The bridegroom said, "Next Sunday thou must come out there to see me. I have already invited the guests, and I will strew ashes in order that thou mayst find thy way through the forest." When Sunday came, and the maiden had set out on her way, she became very uneasy. She herself knew not exactly why, and to mark her way she filled both her pockets full of peas and lentils. Ashes were strewn at the entrance of the forest, and those she followed, but at every step she threw a couple of peas on the ground. She walked almost the whole day until she reached the middle of the forest, where it was the darkest, and there stood a solitary house, which she did not like, for it looked so dark and dismal. She went inside it, but no one was within, and the most absolute stillness reigned. Suddenly a voice cried, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." The maiden looked up, and saw that the voice came from a bird, which was hanging in a cage on the wall. Again it cried, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." Then the young maiden went on farther from one room to another, and walked through the whole house, but it was entirely empty, and not one human being was to be found. At last she came to the cellar, and there sat an extremely aged woman, whose head shook constantly. "Can you not tell me," said the maiden, "if my betrothed lives here?" "Alas, poor child," replied the old woman, "whither hast thou come? Thou art in a murderer's den. Thou thinkest thou art a bride soon to be married, but thou wilt keep thy wedding with death. Look, I have been forced to put a great kettle on there with water in it, and when they have thee in their power, they will cut thee to pieces without mercy, will cook thee and eat thee, for they are eaters of human flesh. If I do not have compassion on thee and save thee, thou art lost." Thereupon the old woman led her behind a great hogshead where she could not be seen. "Be as still as a mouse," said she. "Do not make a sound or move, or all will be over with thee. At night, when the robbers are asleep, we will escape. I have long waited for an opportunity." Hardly was this done than the godless crew came home. They dragged with them another young girl. They were drunk, and paid no heed to her screams and lamentations. They gave her wine to drink, 3 glasses full, 1 glass of white wine, 1 glass of red, and a glass of yellow, and with this her heart burst in twain. Thereupon they tore off her delicate raiment, laid her on a table, cut her beautiful body in pieces, and strewed salt thereon.